if you've got somebody who's sitting in a role, who's the uncle, the auntie, the brother, whatever it might be, who's not performing well in that role, that starts to create an animosity, if you like, throughout the organisation. How come Debra gets away with that? If it was me, I wouldn't. So you've got to be very, very careful that you're managing them in the same way that you would manage any other employee in the business, and that they're being measured on what they're doing.
That's right. Yeah. And I see, I see families who, when they're grappling with these sorts of things, they'll develop an employment policy, and the policy might say, for example, that one family member can never report to another family member.
Yeah.
So they should always be reporting to a non-family.
So hello and welcome to another episode of Better Business, Better Life. Today I'm joined by Iain Blakeley, who is a New Zealand chairperson of the Family Business Association. Welcome, Iain.
Thank you, Debra. It's lovely to be here, and thank you for the opportunity to talk about something I'm very passionate about.
Yeah, you and me both. So we're going to be talking about family businesses today, and that's something I know we both share a common passion in. Tell me about your journey into getting into family businesses.
Well, I have got into them as an advisor, and I started out advising family businesses when I was a partner at one of the big four accounting firms, and I kind of was a natural progression of the work I was doing there. And I was advising from a tax perspective mainly a whole lot of New Zealand family businesses, and as often happens when you're in a role like that, in a firm like that, the conversations with the family business owners tend to extend beyond just the specialist topic that you're there to advise them about, and you become a much kind of a broader advisor to them, and more a sort of a bit of a second opinion, or a wise head, or whatever you want, a mentor, or whatever you want to call it, but just someone who is able to share a reasonably broad range of experience with your clients. And so I've found myself advising family business owners on a range of things, and then we started to look more closely at the succession issues with family businesses, and New Zealand was going from being having a sort of family business paradigm where owners would the beach to batch and the BMW sort of thing, where they'd get in their 40s and they had it all, and they'd sell their business and go to the beach and play golf, but that wasn't happening anymore, and people were thinking longer term, and they were more concerned about what's the next generation going to inherit, what does the world look like for them, what security are we leaving for them, what are we doing for our communities, what's this money all about, what's it for. So those sorts of discussions started to take place more, and so I was doing that work when I was at this firm, and then I left it and went to do my own thing, and I realised I needed to learn more from other family businesses. And there was nothing in New Zealand really to tap into. There was no organisation that represented them solely.
Which is kind of odd, because there's quite a lot of family businesses here in New Zealand, isn't there?
There are loads, and there are lots of different business organisations and member organisations that deal with different aspects of being in business. But there was no entity, no member organisation that dealt exclusively with family businesses. And I asked some of my family business clients, what is something that we could do for you? What do you want most? How can we help? And they said, well, we really want to meet other family businesses. It can be lonely in business. You get to meet your suppliers and your customers, but you don't really have those conversations with other family business owners about the sorts of issues that you have as a family business owner.
And it's different to being an ordinary sort of business owner. A family business has far more dynamics in it, so it's not even like you can talk to your local, private business that is not family owned. It is quite a different dynamic, isn't it?
Well, it is, yes. And I mean, there are a lot of things that are the same, but for sure it's different when you have family members working in the business. They're wearing so many different hats. They're not just brothers and sisters and daughters and fathers and mothers and sons and uncles and nephews and things. They're wearing hats as employees, as fellow directors, as trustees. There's so many things going on, and you overlay the family dynamic of emotion over the top of it all, and it's it's a pretty interesting space.
So they were saying to you, we want to meet other family business owners.
We want to meet other family businesses, and And I wanted to get better as a family business advisor, and I wanted to meet other family business advisors as well as businesses. So I heard of this organisation in Australia called the Family Business Australia, now called the Family Business Association. And I went to one of their conferences, and I was just blown away by the quality of the material. They had international speakers, top people who specialise in family business advice from around the world, as well as some amazing family businesses from Australia and other parts of the world. All speaking, sharing their stories, which is what it's all about. It's how they learn, and then mingling and mixing afterwards, and having the social time and having fun together. And it was incredibly powerful. And I learnt more in a week at that than I had in the previous couple of years. So I thought I want more of this, and they were interested in doing something in New Zealand, and so I worked with them to set up a similar organisation in New Zealand, which was called Family Business New Zealand, now called the New Zealand Family Business Association, and we're a member-based organisation, mostly family business members and some advisors who specialise in advising family businesses, and our job is to just connect family businesses with other family businesses, provide a vehicle for them to share their stories, provide a vehicle for some of that expert knowledge to be passed on through education programs, and also a vehicle for people to have fun.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, you kind of started on that journey back in 2017-18, and I think you launched the 1st of July 2019. So how many members have you got in the organisation now?
We have 120 members now.
Yeah.
And so we're pretty happy with that. It's good. And we're always, trying to get the story out, trying to get more members. We tend to find that people come along to our events, and that's how they find out about us. It's how they get to know other family businesses, and they might come to 2 or 3, and then they decide, I want to do more of this. I want to join, say, one of our forum groups, which are probably our most, considered to be the most valuable thing that we do, really, I think.
So that's where you get together with other family business owners in a monthly environment. Monthly, is it?
That's right, yeah. So they join a group, there'll be 7 or 8 in a group. They're not competitors, and they meet regularly. They set their own agenda. They have a facilitator. They decide what they want to discuss and where they want to do it, and whether they just want to have a social time occasionally or whatever. And the discussions, as the trust builds over time, the discussions get more and more intimate, more valuable, and more important to them, and they form a bond, a really important bond.
I was a member of EO for about 3.5 years, a similar sort of setup, but obviously not for family businesses. And I think we always talked about getting to the 5% you don't talk about with anybody else. Once you've got that trust, you really have an opportunity to talk about things that nobody else will quite understand, or nobody else that you can trust to actually have that conversation with.
Exactly.
So I'm assuming your forums are the same.
That's exactly what happens.
Yeah.
And then they start. They share people. They share resources. They do deals. They say, look, I'm looking for an opportunity for one of my kids to have some work experience somewhere, and they might go and work with one of the other ones.
Nice.
Those sorts of things.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
And you also work very closely with Family Business Australia as well, don't you? So a lot of the things that are done are sort of done in conjunction with. So we can go and do the Family Business Conference over in Australia if you want to, or you can do the one over here. Yeah.
Absolutely. We're interdependent. We need Family Business Australia. It's our parent organisation. It provides a lot of the back office to us. We just could not have started this without them. Their ongoing support is critical. They've got they've got the agenda. They've got all the teaching material, all the courses, all the experience. So we absolutely need them. They're part and parcel of what we do.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you've been in family business for a long, long time. What do you see as being the fundamental differences between an ordinary privately owned business or even a publicly owned business and a family business? What would you say the key differences are?
I think the emotion element is a big one, right? That's critical because the family and the business are intertwined, and as we were talking about earlier, sometimes the business is just another child of the parents.
Yes.
So that's a big difference because it just causes them to think differently about business decisions.
And there's history there
creates a whole
too,
lot of
isn't there?
risk,
Because there's a
right?
family history. We were doing some genealogy stuff yesterday, and it's like
Yeah.
talking about, where did you actually come from, and who's on what family and what's happened in that family. So all of that starts to come into the business as well.
Absolutely, the discussion around what's our legacy, where are we going. They tend to have longer term views, perspectives. They make longer term investment decisions typically.
Yep.
Or they may not, but that's typically they do, and they've got to grapple with potential downsides, which is how do you fire a family member? How do you not employ one because they're not quite right for the job, or how do you avoid employing one because they're a family member, which is the wrong reason,
Yeah.
So those there are pitfalls.
Yep.
And then there are benefits, because often there's a level of trust often that doesn't exist as instantly in other businesses where non-family members are working together. If you've been brought up in the same household, ordinarily there would be a pretty high level of trust there, which is important.
Absolutely.
And an understanding of each other. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you've worked with a number of family businesses in your lifetime. What are the sort of the pitfalls that they tend to fall into? In general terms, we're not going to talk about anybody specifically, but I'll tell you what, fascinating for me, going through and doing the accreditation work that I've been doing with you guys through the Adelaide University, was looking at the different family businesses around the world. And some of the biggest companies are actually family-owned businesses. So the LMVHs of the world, Louis Vuittons, the Porsches, the Ferraris, there's a whole bunch of them. And I hadn't realised that there's that many family businesses. I think that we underestimate how many there actually are out there. But they do come with a very unique set of challenges, don't they? So what have been the things you've seen in your work with family businesses that are unique to a family business?
Oh, I think there's many. I think probably the one that is the most, the one you want to avoid most, and the one that is the saddest, is the potential for the business and the planning of the business and the way it's run and its involvement in the family to destroy the family. Right? That's the worst outcome, and that's what you don't want. But it can happen, right? And maybe that TV series that's on at the moment, Succession, is a good example of.
I haven't watched it yet.
How that can happen.
Yeah.
It's a totally dysfunctional.
That's all based
family,
around Rupert Murdoch, isn't it?
Well, there's
loosely
a rumour.
based on Rupert Murdoch.
I don't know. I think it's a dramatisation of a whole lot of different issues, and probably quite useful from that perspective, because it's a bit of a lens on what no one really wants to be like, I guess.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, when families do get split apart by these things, and it's money, but it's also they hold their business dear to them.
Yep.
Decisions that are made about it will influence the future of the individuals within the family, and so they've all got a stake in it. And when they disagree, it can be, and if they disagree in a way that gets on the front page of the paper, it's not good.
We were talking before we came in here about the fact that there's the whole succession planning thing. Obviously, is really, really important. But it's also, we talked about the business being a bit like their baby. So sometimes when you're the founder of the business, the first person in the family to actually found the business, you've brought up this baby, and trying to let go of that is really, really hard. But we know it's really important that we actually build the business up to have independence, just like we do with children. What have you seen, without giving away any names or anything, have you ever seen that challenge in a business where the owner or the founder has been so wed to the business that they've really struggled to let go?
Absolutely. I see it often. And you kind of understand it, right? Because founders, they're a certain type of skills and experiences have got them to where they are. And those skills and those ways of working and those values have been successful for them. So they think they're important values, hard work and frugality and whatever, and sacrifice, those sorts of things. They're the sorts of values that sit really strongly with founders, and they tend to want to be in control of their own destiny as well. So it takes a lot to trust others, and so the pitfall really is not letting go or not developing that trust in the next generation at the right time, and losing control of the succession transfer.
Yes.
Right. So if they don't do it in a planned way, then the potential consequences that it happens in an unplanned way, and they don't have control of it.
Yeah.
Right. And it doesn't happen how they would like it to happen. And it could be, even sooner than they expect it to. So, I mean, I see a lot of that, and you kind of understand it because as parents, it is hard to see your kids as,
anything but kids.
Well, as anything but your kids.
Yeah.
And you always want to look out for them and help make decisions for them and think they need your help. You know?
Yeah.
And often they don't need it quite as much as we think.
Yeah. And
they've been brought up with some amazing values if they've been raised in that house of that founder, and so those are challenges. Is just getting the kids to a point where you are comfortable with them to step up and move into positions, but also allowing them to do things in a different way than the founder. Right?
Well, I think particularly with ever-changing world as well. I mean, for a lot of us, we were brought up in a certain era and there were certain ways of doing things, but it's all changed. And so sometimes bringing on board the younger generation means that they actually will approach it in a slightly different way. They might have ideas that could be really beneficial to the business moving forward. Yeah, but it's hard. It's tough to let go.
It is hard. It is hard to let go. And of course, the kids are brought up in this house where they might not have seen their parent, who's a founder, very much.
Yeah.
Right. They've been working on their other baby, and so that's an issue, right? And the parents actually may not want their children to be the same sort of parents as them. They might want their kids to have more time with their grandchildren than they had with theirs. So that's a different approach to parenting, and it's a different approach to running your business when you don't want your kids to maybe work as hard as you did as the founder, because you want them to have more time with their family. So there's different things going on. And of course, the founders are often, they're kind of immigrants to wealth, right? They may not have had it when they were born themselves. They've created the wealth themselves. So they've come to it and they've learnt, they've had to adapt and learn how to live in the world of wealth. And it is like going to a new country and experiencing a new culture. It's a different way of living. But the kids aren't immigrants to wealth. They've
been born into it.
Right? So they've got a different view of. I mean, I know my own kids used to think money just came from
a cash point machine,
right? Exactly.
Or a credit card. Just use the credit card, Dad.
That's right. So that's another wee challenge that they have to deal with, because they've got different outlooks on money and life and
then of course we get to third generation and it's a completely different story altogether, isn't it? And
they're not even brought up. The third generation aren't necessarily brought up in the same household as the founder, right? So they're not going to. They're one step away from those values and so on. And there's been another person come in to influence them, who will be their, the other spouse, who's a non-family. Non-founder's family member. So that's growing the family kind of intellectual capital and social capital, but it's also changing its dynamic from a culture point of view. And so the cousins will have even more different outlooks on life. And business, so when when you're a founder and you've got a few children and you're contemplating them becoming involved in the business, you kind of have to get your those siblings to work together as a team somehow. And I don't know about you, but I see a lot of families where the siblings are pretty competitive. Right.
Yes.
They're not necessarily used to working together collaboratively. They're used to competing with one another.
That's right.
So that in itself is a challenge, but at least they were brought up in the same household and they know each other deeply well. And
So I do find you can often go a
Yeah.
lot deeper, a lot quicker because you've got that trust. But at the same time, there's also quite often a lot of history in the family that actually affects the way they think about each other. So we've all got our issues from our past, that, you know, from our growing up and our childhood. And when you've grown up in a family, there's always that that your brother was this way in the family, which might be completely unrelated to the business, but there's that still sitting in the background. Some resentment,
Yeah.
or some, you know, feeling that mum and dad were favoured one more than the other, which happens, not deliberately, but parents, you know, want to look after their children. They think they're doing it equally, and it isn't always equal.
Yeah, or someone got a better bike,
Yeah.
or, you know, than for Christmas, or
I'll never
sometimes
forget, my brother got a stereo at a younger age than I did because he was a boy and he appreciated music more. I'll never forget that, you know, even as an adult, I kind of...
Let it go, Debra.
Yeah, I can't let it go. You know, it's like, so what I'm saying is, you imagine if I can remember that dynamic can come into a business as well. Yeah.
And of course, you know, the first child probably came along at a time when the parents were just starting out.
Yeah.
Right, and they probably didn't have a lot of wealth, and were still doing it tough and still putting all their spare money into the business and working every hour they had. And
Yep.
you know, and then the last child might have come along at a time when
Business is
they
booming,
were
they're
able
doing
to send
well.
them to private school. They were more affluent. They could have holidays together, and
Yeah.
so the first child thinks the younger one's been spoiled, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And doesn't know as much about hard work and things like that. So there's a whole lot of dynamics that go on, that getting to those siblings to work together as a team is fascinating. And
But it's also important that they're put into the right roles as well, right? Because you shouldn't actually get a role in a business by birthright. It should be that you're looking at what the business actually wants and needs and find the right people to fill those positions.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. You know, fundamentally that's right. You
Yeah.
know, that someone should fill a position in a business because they have the right skills and experience. In a family business, weighing up whether someone's a family member or not, I mean, in my mind, I've always thought of it as being relevant to the final decision.
Okay.
Because, but it's not going to make someone who's not qualified for the role get the role.
Yeah.
But it's relevant if you've got two candidates who are otherwise equal and one's a
Sure,
family member.
then it makes more sense.
You'll
Yeah.
give preference to the family member because because they're a family member, right?
Yeah. As long as they're on sort of equal
and
footing
they
in
want to
terms
work
of
in the business, and yeah. And if they're otherwise, you know, equal or pretty close, then I think you'd weigh it in a little bit.
Sure.
In favour of them.
I guess, I've seen it in lots of businesses. No.
Yeah.
Well, and it can be really detrimental because if you've got somebody who's sitting in a role, who's the uncle, the auntie, the brother, whatever it might be, who's not performing well in that role, it starts to create an animosity, if you like, throughout the organisation. How come Debra gets away with that? You know, if it was me, I wouldn't. So you've got to be very, very careful that you're managing them in the same way that you would manage any other employee in the business, and that they're being measured on what they're doing.
That's right. Yeah. And I see, I see families who, when they're grappling with these sorts of things, they'll develop an employment policy, and the policy might say, for example, that one family member can never report to another family member.
Yeah.
So they should always be reporting to a non-family member.
I've also seen families who insist that the members go out and actually work for another company before they come back
That's right.
to work for the company. I remember the Joneses family, then when we went to their event in Newmarket, you know, hearing about what they actually did to ensure that anybody who wanted to work in the business had the opportunity to, but they were given the right training, the right, you know, go out and do something else for another business, then come back. I think that's really important.
Yeah, the ideal is that, they leave school, they go off and they do a course of study in an area that might be unrelated to the family business but useful to it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it might not be related directly to the family business, but it might be a skill that can be used in the wider family, and because they'll often have other investment activities and so on. So they'll go off and get this skill and then go and work for someone else and work in a different place and have a different manager and learn about the real world and gain some financial independence and a bit of financial identity themselves, and learn, how to pay bills and be responsible.
Yes.
And come back. And what they do when they come back is they enlarge the knowledge of the family
As a whole.
by doing that. Otherwise, if they all stay within the family ecosystem, the family's not really getting any smarter or wiser, or so it just adds to the family intellectual capital when they do that.
And of course, in some family businesses, you've got people who don't want to come into the business.
Yes.
So you've got, maybe even multi-generational family businesses where suddenly the people who are in the family now do not want to be part of that business. That creates its own challenges, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. And New Zealand's had to deal with that in the farming sector for a long time, and iwi have dealt with some of these issues as well, of course, because they have a multi-generational view of life, and they've dealt with a lot of these issues. So you'll have, family members who are part of the owner group who, in a way are beneficial owners, but they're not involved in the business. They don't want to be working in the business, but nevertheless they've got a say, right? And you have other family members who aren't even part of the owner group. They might be spouses of, but they're still part of the family because they'll be parents of the next generation.
Yes.
But they're not necessarily in the owner group. So they've got a different viewpoint. They might want to be involved. They might not want to be involved. They might want to have nothing to do with it. But they are part of the family. So the family needs to find a way to include all these people. And one of the great things about, when you've got a family business that is growing and is taking this intergenerational view and is developing, more wealth in each generation, it means that the family can continue to support the growing family. And it can support that growing family in lots of different ways.
Not necessarily just working in the business,
like jobs in the business, or jobs in some have family offices, some will have family members who look after organising family events, or the family's other investment activities, their properties, whatever it is, or they might just have family members who work in a charitable foundation and do work in the community on behalf of the family as a way of doing good with their wealth and giving back, or just family members who are good at looking after the next generation. And the other thing is, when they've got this wealth, they can support family members who want to pursue vocations or careers that might not necessarily
be part of that family business, like agriculture. You're saying is a great example. Is that you can actually have farm owners who are particular family farmers who are particularly wealthy, but their sons and daughters or cousins don't want to actually work in the farming business. So you can actually create that as a business that supports them through shareholder dividends and things, as opposed to actually working in the business. Yeah,
you can. And I think another good example is. I've seen a family business where they've had someone who's wanted to pursue a musical career.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And it's not instantly rewarding.
No, my husband's a musician,
so not rewarding at all. But they get the opportunity to pursue their passion because the family is privileged, and it can provide these opportunities for their family members.
Yeah, but it all comes back to you've got to have all those discussions, haven't you? You've got to have all those conversations to work out what each person actually wants out of it, what the family as a whole wants out of it, what the bigger family trust wants out of it, to get really clear on how to support all those different members of the family, don't you?
Yeah, well, you've got a business you have to look after.
Yep.
And you've got to grow that, and that's going to be focused on all the things that businesses have to focus on.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
And so you've got to look after that, and you've got to look after your family members, and the family itself, and grow a family that is cohesive. I'm assuming that's what you want to do. You want a united family, a cohesive family that's having fun together, and shares values. And is doing good in the community,
and can still get together around for the family events without being at each other's throats. I mean, that's a really important part of it, isn't it?
Yeah. So, you want all those things, and if you make the decision that you want this business to last for generations, be a 100-year family-owned business, then, what we know is that 60% or more of the failures occur because you don't get the communication and trust right. So that's, it's a soft thing, it's a soft skill, but it's fundamentally, that's what you've got to work on first. So if you're a founder, you need to find a way to start the conversations, and it's never really too early to start them. To start involving the kids in discussions about, money and financial literacy and what mum and dad do and what the business does and what good it does in the community, and to introduce them to some family members and some people in the business and sometimes the kids might have holiday jobs there, that kind of thing. It's never really too early to get them involved if the kids show interest. But communication is the key. And
well, if you think, it's the same with every
things
relationship, right? I mean, even a one-on-one relationship, communication and trust are absolutely paramount to getting that relationship working well.
Yep.
Do you share the same values? Are you heading in the same direction? Where are you going? And really what we've got as a family is just a multitude of those different relationships that all have to be on the same page, that all have to know, what's upsetting each other, what the issues are, how they're working through, how they resolve them. Yeah.
So it doesn't come by accident.
No.
Right, it just doesn't come naturally. It's everyone's busy.
Yeah.
And the founders and the business owners, they're just immersed in the business.
Yeah.
So it's something you have to work on, and you have to set aside time for.
Yep.
So you have to do that, and you have to do you've got to do all the housekeeping stuff. You've got to have the right legal documents. You've got to have wills and trusts and all that stuff.
I was going to say your original background is a lawyer, right?
It's just basic. You have to, that's things fail if you don't get that right. But mostly people get them right because they go to their lawyers and they get it sorted out.
But you have to think about the wider family too, though, don't you? Because if you think about it, when you've got people marrying into the family business or marrying into the family which has a family business, you've got to ensure that you're actually protecting all parties in that relationship as well. So it is important to get the right advice and make sure you're doing the right things.
Yeah, and everyone's got a kind of slightly different approach to that, but what I see is most families, they don't want their business to be broken up. They don't want their wealth to be broken up, so they want to keep it within their lineage, right?
Yes.
So their bloodline, essentially, or adopted children, whatever. But they don't want it to be split up because relationships break up.
Yes.
Right, but they do want to keep supporting the next generation of children. So you've got to, find a way to do that. It's perfectly possible to do it, but it comes back to get the legals right and make sure you've got that trust and communication as much as work on having a great family as well as a great business.
Yeah,
and having a great family includes having in-laws who are happy and engaged and communicated with, who know where they, what their rights are, what the roles are for them within that family, how they can help, how they can develop their own, develop themselves personally, how they can support their children, and what life means for them if the relationship doesn't last.
Yep.
Let's face it, they don't all last. So, what does that mean? And so, as long as those conversations are being had, and there's no surprises, you've got a better chance of success.
Absolutely. Now, I always ask my guests to share some real practical tips for people. So I want to ask you on the spot, 3 top tips for family business owners or members of family businesses. What would they be?
So in the context of the discussion we've been having around intergenerational succession, I would say, first of all, just start now.
Yep.
If you haven't already.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Start the conversation.
Never too early.
And if your kids are really young, then just start by talking to them about money, because they don't learn about that stuff at school. And there are people out there and organisations who can help, but just start by talking to them about some of these things and role modelling the right behaviours around work ethic and setting goals and being diligent and having fun and respect for other people and all the sorts of things you'd want. So start right away.
Yep.
And another tip would be do the housekeeping. So deal with if the kids are older and there's some of those kind of grumblings beneath the surface, sense of inequality or anything that might be festering away. Bring it to the surface, deal with it, and move on. Right.
Because it can really hold a business back, and I've seen that myself.
Yeah. So deal with that housekeeping. So do your documents and deal with all that stuff. And I guess thirdly is just keep working on the trust and communication. Yeah. Around the family, keep finding ways to get together. Be conscious of what hats you're wearing. So when you are together, when you're having a family barbecue,
you're the family.
Have rules. You don't talk about the business at the Christmas barbecue or whatever. You just all, mum, dad, brother, sister, that sort of thing.
And if you think about the three circles, the family, the business, and the ownership, it's like you almost need to have a leader for each of those, and a set of rules for each of those, and a set of vision for each of those, so that we're really clear where those boundaries are,
good idea.
and they don't actually get intermingled.
That is a good idea. So the owner group and the family group and the business group, just you want all those things aligned.
Yep.
And on the same page, so you need that overall holistic view, but you do need some champions within each group.
And that set those boundaries that say, hey, come on, guys, we're at a barbecue, not a good time to be talking about business right now.
That's right, yeah. And, when you're sitting around a table as trustees, having a trust meeting, you're not father and daughter or mother and son. That's not your relationship. You're co-trustees. So you're wearing different hats, and you've got to think of each other as equals.
Yeah.
And
really
so you need to be able to create an environment where those discussions can take place and people feel safe and comfortable expressing their opinions, even if they're much younger.
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I think, and sometimes these things can be hard. So, obviously, there are advisors out there that can actually help you in all different areas, business advice, the wealth management, the tax advice. And then I think the peer group thing, that's something I'm a real proponent of. I think that actually spending time with peers is probably where you get your best learnings because they've been on that same journey. They've probably had all the same issues that you're going through, and they can share how they have dealt with them. It's not from an academic point of view, but from a genuine, when we had this happen, this is how we dealt with it. And I think that gives you a huge understanding, and it doesn't feel like somebody's telling you what you should do, but they're actually being able to share with you the knowledge they've gained from what's happened to them. Yeah,
that's right. It's how I learn.
Yep.
And that's how my clients tell me that they learn. So you're right. You get the people. It's amazing what happens. We have our conferences. We put a couple of families on the stage, and we just ask them some questions, and then the questions come from the floor, and it's pretty powerful what happens.
Absolutely.
Really. And we had another networking event recently I was at, and there was an elder kind of family business founder, talking to a young guy who was starting out in his own business. And they didn't know each other before that event, and they just happened to be in a group, and they were chatting away, and the younger guy was just thirsty for knowledge and kept asking questions, and the older fellow is stepping back and not as involved in his business but just loves passing on his knowledge and coaching and guiding. He was just letting this young guy know what he knows and sharing his thoughts, and they ended up establishing, as a result of that, a regular mentor-mentee sort of
relationship,
catch-up.
Yeah,
right.
Perfect.
And the older guy just offered his time, and I've noticed that, and a lot of people who have had success are more than happy to share their time with others and give their time to others, because they want others to be successful as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So on that note, if they wanted to get in contact with you and they're interested in joining the Family Business Association in New Zealand, how do they do that?
The best thing is to go to our website, so familybusinessnz.org.
Okay.
Familybusinessnz.org.
Yes, got it. Yep.
That's the website. And go there and check us out.
Yep. And so you've got a whole raft of different things. So you've got formal education, you've got the networking get-togethers, you've got the storytelling, you've got a whole range of things that can actually help. And the best thing you can do is get along to an event and meet some other people, right?
Yeah, look, if they give me a call,
Yep.
My number's on the website. They can find my LinkedIn page. They can send me a message and get in touch with me.
Yep.
We'll make sure that they can come along to an event, see what we like, get to know what we do, and meet other family businesses.
Yes.
And we'll go from there. But
and it's a not-for-profit too, right? So it's actually all about helping people in family businesses.
Yep.
Yeah,
that's what
fantastic.
it's all about.
Cool.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say is, obviously we share the same passion, right? I'm very passionate about family businesses and helping them. If there's anybody who's listening into this podcast and they'd like to share their story and share some of the highs and the lows, because we all know it's not always highs, there's some highs and lows that go on there, I'd be really happy to have them come on and talk to me as well. So, and if you come across anybody who wants to share their story, I'd love to have them come on the show.
Yeah, we should do that.
That would be great. Well, look, thank you so much for giving me your time.
Okay,
I had a great chat before the podcast and again in the podcast. And so if anybody wants to get in contact with you, Family Business New Zealand.nz.org, or look you up and they can give you a call directly.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Iain.
Thank you, Debra.
Thanks.